Today, we're diving into a really fascinating interpretation of the Qur'an, one that asks us to see it not as a dusty history book, but as something alive, like a computational system and eternal source code.
So let's just jump right in by challenging how we usually look at Scripture. Most of us see it as a static record of things that happened a long time ago. But what if that's not its primary function? What if it's actually a dynamic model, a living algorithm that describes patterns that repeat over and over in the universe and, inside of us?
And that's exactly what this explainer is all about. Based on our source material, we're going to explore this new paradigm, thinking of the Quran as a kind of source code for what's called a recurrent cosmology. It's an idea that honestly changes everything about the act of reading it.
Okay, so what does that actually mean, a recurrent cosmology? Well, the crucial point is this. Figures like Adam facing his trial, or Nuh building the ark, or Ibrāhīm standing in that fire, they aren't just snapshots from history. In this view, they represent timeless states of being, archetypes that repeat in every generation. They're patterns happening right now.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to zoom in on one of the most mysterious and frankly puzzling stories in the Quran. It's our case study. On the surface, it seems like a straightforward miracle, but the source we're looking at suggests it's actually a profound lesson in, well, divine physics.
It all starts with Ibrāhīm's famous request. Now, he already believes, he has faith, but he asks for something more. He asks for certainty, for a pattern that his heart can be satisfied with. You could say it's the cry of any seeker who doesn't just want to believe, but wants to understand the system behind reality.
And the response he gets is this very specific four-step instruction. Take 4 birds, get to know them intimately, then place a piece of them on different hills, and finally call out to them. I mean, it sounds like pure magic, right? But what if it isn't? What if this is a controlled experiment in divine causality, designed to teach a fundamental principle of how creation and resurrection actually work? And this question right here, this is the absolute key that unlocks the entire verse. Because if the birds aren't just birds, then what in the world are they? This is the exact point where this interpretation pivots from a simple story into a deeply complex, systemic teaching.
So let's get to the big reveal. This is where we see how this story builds into a framework that is, well, it's completely unexpected. We're about to shift from theology straight into mathematics. So, according to the source material, what Ibrāhīm witnessed wasn't just a spectacle to bolster his faith. No, it was something far more profound.
It was a divine formula, a lesson delivered in the universal language of pattern and math, intended not just for him but for every seeker who would come later, especially those of us living in an age of information, data, and systems.
And this is where the source presents its most radical idea. It argues that the 4 birds are in fact representations of the 4 distinct terms in this specific cubic equation. F of x equals x cubed minus x squared minus 4x plus 4. It's a huge leap from parable to algebra, so let's break down exactly what that could possibly mean.
Okay, look at how this maps out. It's pretty brilliant. The first bird, the cubic term x cubed, that's seen as the origin of life in its full 3 dimensions. The second bird, the squared term minus x squared, gives that life form and structure, kind of like a blueprint. The third bird, the linear term minus 4x, represents motion, the journey, the trials we face through time. And that fourth bird, the constant plus 4, that's the unchanging divine command that holds the entire system together.
So, in this model, when Ibrāhīm calls the birds, it's not just a sound he's making. It's the spiritual and intellectual act of solving the equation, of setting it to 0. When he does that, the scattered terms, the birds on the hills, resolve back into their roots and come together as a single living system. Suddenly, resurrection isn't a random revival. It's the elegant solution to a divine equation.
Now, with this mathematical key, our source material suggests we can unlock a much deeper, systemic logic running through the entire Quran, a kind of Quranic physics, if you will.
At the heart of this physics is a core duality, a bit like the wave-particle duality you see in quantum mechanics. On one side, you have the wave, which is the unseen truth, the latent potential, the divine command. And on the other, you have the particle, the physical thing, the manifest action, the reality we can actually observe. You can even see this duality in the divine names. Ar-Rahman, the All-Merciful, is like the universal, unseen field of mercy. That's the wave. But Ar-Rahim, the bestower of mercy, is the specific, tangible act of mercy that you actually experience. That's the particle. They're just two sides of the same beautiful reality.
So what does this tell us about the shape of our existence? Well, in this view, life, death, and resurrection aren't just a straight line with a beginning and an end. They're more like a continuous Mobius loop, where the end is constantly folding back into the beginning. It's an endless cycle of creation, dissolution, and reassembly.
Okay, so we've got a mathematical formula for resurrection, a physics of creation, but why does any of this matter? This isn't just a cool thought experiment. The source argues that its real purpose is to change our role as the reader, to transform us into the seeker.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. The Qur'an, seen this way, is not some passive book you read to collect historical facts. It's an interactive system. It's a mirror that shows you the very patterns you are embodying, and it's a tool for you to discover what you are becoming.
And this framework makes so much sense when you think about it. It argues that divine revelation has always spoken the language of its time. To people in the desert, it spoke of sheep and stars. To empire builders, it spoke of thrones and floods. So to us, living in the age of data and algorithms, why wouldn't it speak in the language of functions, systems, and information?
This is the cry of the modern seeker. It's a direct echo of what Ibrāhīm himself asked for, not just to believe in a miracle, but to understand its logic, to see the math behind it. And this interpretation claims the answer isn't some big secret. It's right there, embedded in the source code, just waiting for us to ask the right questions.
And that's really the final thought this all leaves us with. It's an invitation, really. An invitation to shift how we see things. To stop seeing the text as just a book to be read and start seeing it as a code to be engaged with, a living function that's waiting for you to solve it.